This is Living Waters of Grace, the teaching ministry of Lewis Harrell, Assistant Pastor of Calvary Chapel of Westmoreland County in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Now here's Pastor Lewis as he continues teaching through God's Word.
She honors her husband. She submits to her husband to the point where she acknowledges his authority and she calls him Lord. It's not that she's worshiping Abraham. It's not that she's putting Abraham on any kind of pedestal or anything. It's not that she's saying that he's like God. No, that's not what she's doing. It's actually more of a expression of her heart to show the degree to which she honors her husband.
Sarah obeyed her husband Abraham because she had respect for him in her heart. She followed Abraham's instructions even if they were problematic in her eyes. Do you have the same respect in your heart for God? If so, do you know how to express it? In today's message, Pastor Lewis discusses how you can honor God. The only way to show your respect to your Creator is by obeying His commands and walking in the path that Jesus has chosen for you. This demonstrates your heartfelt love for God. Now here's Pastor Lewis in 1 Peter chapter 3 with today's edition of Living Waters of Grace.
Until we see the power of God working in the people who say that they believe, in the people who say that they follow what you are preaching, until we see the power of God working in them, we'll stick with our own religion. We'll stay where we are. What a powerful example of how it is with us. When we go before Gentiles or unbelievers, what does our life show them? And this is what Peter is saying about wives. You want to win your husband? Let the power of God work in your own life. And then in verse 3, he says, do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, the wearing of gold, or the putting on of fine apparel, but let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. What a powerful verse there. So he says, look, if you want to impact somebody, wives, if you want to impact your husband or other people, don't let it be the way you look. Don't let that be the emphasis of how you want to impact somebody. Don't let what people see be the reason why they're attracted to you. The hair or the arranging of the hair or the fine bling that you're wearing or the expensive clothes that you're wearing. He said, don't let that be the reason why someone is attracted to you or why someone is influenced by you. He also mentioned something very similar over in 1 Timothy. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9, he says this, in like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with propriety or respect, in moderation or discretion, not with braided hair or gold pearls or costly clothing, but which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. Peter is not saying women don't fix yourselves up. He's not saying women don't get your hair done. He's not saying that. He's not saying women don't wear jewelry. He's not saying women, don't wear nice clothes. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is don't put emphasis, don't make that the emphasis on how you want to present yourself. Let the emphasis be what they see coming out of your heart. Let that be the emphasis. I used to tell my daughters, I said, look, don't drag nothing home who just coming with you or just talking to you or just interested in you because they like the way you wear your jeans. Don't bring nobody home that's just doing it. I don't want no you don't need to have superficial people that's just looking at your outside appearance to try to get a relationship with, because that's going to change. That's going to change. And I'll just use myself as an example. That way I won't get in trouble. When my wife first met me, I had a 32 waist. What y'all laughing at? We'll put it this way. I'll just leave it at this. I don't have a 32 waist now. Okay? It's going to change. Features change. If I look at a picture of myself in the 20s or my 30s, and I look at a picture of myself now, and I don't mind telling you, I'm 64 years old. If I look at a picture of myself now, there are differences. There are differences. It does not look the same. Things have shifted and dropped and moved, and it don't look the same. So don't let that be the reason why someone falls in love with you, because those things change. In fact, the Bible says right here, you want the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. The outside, the physical things, those things are corruptible. They're corruptible. They change. That size 6 that you may have fallen in love with, they may be size 16 now. The 32 that you fell in love with may be a 52 now. I mean, it changes. It changes. So he's saying, look, those things are corruptible. They fade, they die off, because all flesh does die off. But he said, but the beauty, and he even mentioned the word beauty here, of a gentle and quiet spirit. A godly spirit, a woman with godly spirit is what Peter is talking about here. That is incorruptible. It doesn't die. It doesn't fade. It doesn't go away. In fact, women, godly women, become even more beautiful the older they get, because you become more mature in the faith. You become stronger women in the Lord. And it's even more beautiful to see that. And even with men, who submit themselves to the Lord, there's nothing more attractive than a godly man with godly virtues, because it has such impact on not only himself, but other people around them. Then he gives an example here. First of all, he says it's precious in the sight of the Lord. That's what's precious. It's not the way you look on the outside that's precious. In fact, when Samuel tried to get a king, and he went to David's house, and he talked to David's father, he brought these men that looked like they should be the king. They had the outward appearance that they should be the king, but the oil didn't flow. And the oil didn't flow because there was one who had the heart to be a king. Only one. Only one. And Samuel said, wait a minute, something's wrong. Is there another son somewhere? Even the dad didn't think, because of his physical look, his physical appearance, even the dad didn't think that this was one that should be qualified. His dad didn't even think that he should be qualified. But the man of God said, there must be another one here, because the oil's not flowing for these. And there was one, little scrawny David, who had the heart of God. And that's exactly, we want to be men who have the heart of God. We want to be men who are submitted to God, surrendered to God. You want to be women who are submissive, first of all, to God, and then women who are submissive to your own husbands. And then here in verse 5, he goes on, he says, for in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands. So it's interesting because he said, Peter says, look, this isn't a New Testament principle here. This isn't just happening here in the New Testament. This isn't just something that I've said. This is the way that holy women in the Old Testament, the holy women, the women who set themselves apart for God and for his use, this is the way that they conducted themselves. They were submissive to their husbands. But look at the word here where it says the holy women. Look at these 4 words that are really important. Who trusted in God. That is so important, because our submission, a woman's submission for her husband, her submission is not so much the fact that she trusts everything about her husband. The Bible tells us we're not supposed to trust in the arm of flesh. But through her submission, she trusts in God. So even if there was something that may happen where this man may not know how to deal with it, or he deals with it wrong, because I trust in God, God can still work this thing out for me. He can still protect me. He can still watch over me. He can still deliver me. And this is what happened. And so he used Sarah as the example. Sarah, being a godly woman, her husband Abraham is the patriarch of the people of Israel. He's the patriarch of the Jews. And yet the example that he gives is an example that highlights Sarah's submission. And of course, you guys know the story back in Genesis chapter 12, when there was a famine in Canaan. And Abraham took his wife and he went into Egypt. He went to Egypt because he said, look, there's a famine here. There's nothing to eat here. We got to go into Egypt where they have plenty. But Egypt was a rough pagan people. I mean, they were barbaric. I mean, if he goes in there, he knew that he had to deal with some things going into Egypt. So he said before he actually went into Egypt, he looked at his wife Sarah and said, listen, before we go in here, I'm going to tell you now, they're going to see that you're beautiful. And if they think you're my wife, if they think I'm your husband, they're going to kill me so that they can take you. That's just the way these people are. They take what they want. They don't ask nobody. So he said, well, what do you, so please, when we go into Egypt, tell them you're my sister. So my life will be saved. I read this over and over again, and there was never a place where Sarah actually said, I am his sister. Sarah never said that, but she submitted to him. She submitted to her husband. And they went into Egypt, and during that submission, the king of Pharaoh, he brought her into his house, but the Lord took over. The Lord took over. And he plagued Pharaoh. And he plagued him. And he let Pharaoh know, look, the woman you with, you better not touch her. That's someone's wife. That's that man's wife. Pharaoh couldn't wait till the next day to give that woman back to Abraham. He couldn't wait. Man, what did you do? Why did you do this to me? Why did you tell me that was your sister? And you know that's your wife? Here, take your wife and take all your goods, because Pharaoh had treated Abraham good because he thought, look, I'm with your sister, so I'm going to give you stuff. So he gave him mules and bulls and gave him a whole bunch of things. He said, look, take everything I gave you and take your wife, and y'all need to roll. Y'all need to go. And he did. And he did. But God protected Sarah, protected her, and protected Abraham. God can use our submission to do great things. Great things. So he used that as an example, but the key here was that these are women who trusted in God. And they adorn themselves, being submissive to their own husband. The word adorn here was very interesting, because when you look at the meaning of adorned, adorn is actually, it makes a reference of an ornament. It's an ornament. You adorn something with an ornament. It's like I'm going to adorn this tree. During Christmas, the best example I come up with, during Christmas, when we get a tree, my wife loves to decorate trees. Christmas trees. So when we get a tree, she loves it. She'll spend all day decorating that tree. Everywhere we go, she gets an ornament. No matter where we travel to, in the country, out of the country, everywhere we go, she gets an ornament. And she puts it on the tree. And when you come in that room, when you see that tree, you, first of all, see the accessories that's on the tree. If there was no ornament on that tree, it would look just like any other tree in the woods. But because of the accessory, the ornaments that we put on the trees, we see something that is attractive, something that's beautiful. It's not just a tree, but it's the ornaments that we see that catches our attention. And Peter is saying here to women, don't let your adornment be only the outward appearance. Just don't adorn yourself with the outward appearance, but adorn yourself with the submissiveness to your own husbands. Let that be the beauty that people see. Your godliness and the way that you relate to your husbands. Let that be the beauty that people see. And then he goes even further here in verse 6. He says, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are, if you do good and you're not afraid with any terror, whose daughters you are. So he says Sarah called him Lord back in Genesis 18 when the angels of the Lord came to Abraham and they were telling him that, look, your wife Sarah is going to have a child. Your wife Sarah is going to have a child. And it's going to happen at this time. What's going to happen at that time? And Sarah's back in the tent. She hears that and she starts laughing. And she says, wait a minute. How in the world am I going to have a child? Am I going to experience pleasure? Am I going to have pleasure? Me being old and my Lord also being old? So she called Abraham Lord. Any of you brothers in here, your wives call you Lord? I'm just curious. I know it don't happen in my house. I want to emphasize something here. The point here is not so much that Abraham is called Lord by Sarah, that Sarah calls Abraham Lord. The emphasis here is the fact that Sarah respects her husband. She honors her husband. She submits to her husband to the point where she acknowledges his authority and she calls him Lord. It's not that she's worshiping Abraham. It's not that she's putting Abraham on any kind of pedestal or anything. It's not that she's saying that he's like God. No, that's not what she's doing. It's actually more of a expression of her heart to show the degree to which she honors her husband, calling him Lord. So it's not about a woman calling her husband Lord. It's not about that. But what it is about is that a wife being submissive to her husband and to his authority and acknowledging that. That's what it's about. What a beautiful thing it is. A woman who allows herself to submit in that way. There's nothing more closer than being like Jesus Christ, who submit when he doesn't have to submit, but willingly submit. Jesus humbled himself and became a servant. He wasn't a servant, he was God. Sarah's not submitting because she's inferior to Abraham. She's submitting out of obedience because of God's order. When you wives submit to your own husbands, you do it because out of obedience to God, out of order, not because that the man is inferior and superior to you. That's not why you do it. Not because he's greater than you or more important than you are, but you submit to God's order. And that obedience is blessed of God. It pleases God. It takes a strong Christian woman to be able to do that. And then the last verse here that we're going to deal with is husbands. He says here, he deals with them here. Husbands, likewise, dwell with them with understanding. This is the one verse that he gives men to deal with in this whole thing. Husbands, likewise, or the same as, in the same way, deal with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. What an awesome thing here. He says, dwell with them with understanding, give them honor as the weaker vessel, and as one who is going through this life and one who will be going, or we both are going to inherit the eternal life. When I first read this, I said, wow, this is just about husbands, just dwelling with their wives. And it's really important because there's a difference between just living with somebody and actually dwelling with them. It's a difference between the two. Two people of the opposite sex can share. They can be married and they can just share a house. But it seems like that's all they're doing is just sharing the house. The man has not got into the life of his wife. He's not really settled into the marriage with his wife. They just share a space. It's like two ships missing each other. No real relationship. They just dwell in the same space. Peter is saying, no, dwell with them. Dwell with them with understanding. Dwell with them. Have some knowledge of who they are. Know about their strengths, know about their weaknesses, know about the things that move them. What are the things that make them emotional? What are the things that make them happy? What are the areas in which she would feel insecure? And what are the things that make her feel secure? What are the things that I do that make her cry? And what are the things that I do that make her laugh? And do I take that information that I have about her and do I use it to dominate her? Do I use it to abuse her? Or do I use it to love her more? What do I do with it? He says, dwell with them according, in regular King James, it says according to knowledge, but here it says with understanding. Understanding. And then emotionally, to give honor to her as the weaker vessel. And this weaker vessel actually means a physically weaker, a woman that's physically weaker. She doesn't have the strength that a man has. She doesn't have the strength that a man has. So she is the weaker vessel. This is dealing with the physical, but a woman is not weaker. She doesn't have to be weaker spiritually or weaker emotionally or weaker mentally. Not weaker that way, but there is a difference between the physical makeup of a man and a woman. Men are made to have more muscle because we were created to provide for and protect our homes. I don't want to get off into this, but that's why it's not fair for a transgender man to participate in a woman's game. There is a huge disadvantage. I don't care where he is here. Physically, he is a man. And he's stronger. That's all I'm going to say about that. When we talk about dwelling, the Bible tells us over in John, as we close, when the Word was made flesh, he dwelt among us. He dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. He dwelt with us. And then the more you dig in the scripture, you see here that we have a high priest. We have a high priest who can. We don't have a high priest who cannot be touched with our infirmities or our weaknesses, but our high priest can be touched with our weaknesses and our infirmities. Because you see, Jesus dwelt with us. He engaged with us. He came and lived among us. And he took on everything that man was except for sin. Jesus got hungry. Jesus felt pain. Jesus felt sorrow. He dwelt with us. He loved us that much that he came from heaven and he dwelt with us. He took on who we are. And he took our sin. He didn't have none. And he did it because he loved us. He got into every area of our lives. Every area of our lives. He went to funerals, he went to weddings. So he laughed and he had opportunities to cry. He felt what it was like to be ridiculed. So he knows what it means when you go to him and you say, Lord, I feel persecuted. Lord, I feel ridiculed. He knows what that feels like because he dwelt with us. Peter is saying, look, we need to dwell with our wives. We need to know. We need to know them. We need to understand them and not just live in a space with them and to give honor to that weaker vessel.
Thank you for listening to another broadcast of Living Waters of Grace with Pastor Lewis Harrell. Pastor Lewis has been covering passages that are in 1st and 2nd Peter. We've gained so much from these teachings. It's truly such a joy to be washed in God's Word daily. We trust you're experiencing the same benefit as you listen. In the months ahead, we wanted to bring your attention to something that will be changing in the near future. We're switching radio station frequencies from 100.3 to 91.7. The reason we're doing this is so that we can reach an even broader audience, so that more and more people can come to Christ. These teachings can reach people far and wide, and we're anticipating and eagerly expecting God to move mightily through the airwaves. If you'd like to be more involved in this process of reaching additional listeners, you can prayerfully consider sending a donation to Grace FM. P.O. Box 716, Greensburg, Pennsylvania 15601. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us on our website, calvarychapelonline.com. There's a Contact Us tab, and you can get in touch with us that way too. If you'd like to meet with us in person this Sunday, you're welcome to come be a part of what's going on at Calvary Chapel, Westmoreland. We're in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and we'd be so happy to get to know you. All you need to know about our service time and directions can be found on our website, calvarychapelonline.com. That's all for today's message, but we're so happy to be a part of your spiritual growth as God continues to change and transform each one of us into His likeness. This has been another edition of Living Waters of Grace.